Hi, everybody. My name is Shana, and I would like to welcome you to this session of the Ottawa Public Library's online program, The Tech Cafe. The Tech Cafe is a series of presentations on computer and technology topics designed to increase your knowledge and stimulate your interest in technology. This presentation is called iPhone, iPad, Let's Talk, and will be presented by David Roston and Thomas Leroux from BuyMug, the Bytown Mac Users Group. David and Tom have been the organizers of BuyMug since 2006. They are experts in using Apple products and have both been technology consultants for 2 decades, primarily focused on Apple-based solutions. They will be talking about some of the different ways you can use your Apple devices to communicate, including email, messaging, and video chatting apps. For more information about BuyMug, please visit their website at buymug.ca. Before I turn the session over to David and Tom, I would like to remind you that this is a Zoom webinar and that you've all been muted to allow for best sound quality. You will not be able to unmute yourselves. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat window at the bottom of your screen. Before posting a chat, please remember to click on the down arrow beside where it says all panelists and change the chat setting from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that others can see your question and can benefit from any answers provided. So thank you very much for attending this online program presented by the Ottawa Public Library. And I'm now going to turn the session over to David Roston and Tom Leroux. Okay, Dave and Tom, it's yours.
All right. Hi, everybody. So just a little more background on us and BuyMug. The Bytown Mac Users Group has been running for a decade and a half now, is it, Tom?
Yep.
And we've been helping people with their Macs, with their iPhones, iPads, iPod Touch, Apple Watch, and all the Apple software that's out there, and doing all sorts of demos of other stuff in the Apple ecosystem. And so today we're really going to cover messaging. We want to cover, how you should be messaging, otherwise things like etiquette, things like, how to ensure that you're coherent, grammar, spelling, punctuation, lighting, all those things that make messaging work well. We're also going to be covering Apple's messaging services. So that's iMessage and FaceTime. And then we're going to cover a couple of other apps as well. We are very happy to take questions. So please stick them in the chat. And if they are somewhat related to messaging, we will cover them. If they're not, you can always go to bymug.ca, bymug.ca, and join our info list, which is announcements only, or our BuyMug talk list, where we chat about all this stuff. And you can ask your questions. So Virginia has a question about paying with Apple Wallet on the phone. That's not really a messaging thing, so we're not going to cover it today. But if you come and join us on the talk list, we would be happy to walk you through how to set it up. And yes, it's worth it.
Yes, absolutely.
So Tom, I see we have some links in here on getting started, messengers. Oh, that's for later.
Yeah, that's for later.
Yeah. So Tom, what's the biggest use of messaging that you do? I mean, other than work?
Other than work, it's mainly communicating with friends and family. And one of the first things that we're going to touch on is one of the things that a lot of people don't necessarily think about is etiquette doing video chat. One of the things that a lot of people don't necessarily think of is the environment that they're in. You're doing a video chat, either for work or for communicating with your family. Is if you're in a room that is really noisy, that noise will propagate across the entire chat. So if you're having a family Zoom with 15 people, that noisy refrigerator, because you're in the kitchen, everyone gets to listen to the noisy refrigerator for the entire duration of the call. And if you just move to a quieter room, it will sound better and not contribute to the degradation of quality for everyone. One of the other things you can look at is, I think we've all seen this, where people are sitting on the couch or something and they're holding their iPhone, so it's constantly moving back and forth and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You can get a stand like this for your iPhone for
I totally need one of those.
I think you can get them from Henry's for about $20. And if you look on Amazon or some of the other places, you can find them there too. But then you just kind of set it up and point the camera, and you don't have to worry about moving it back and forth. And it also means you have a nice steady shot, which makes the video actually easier to compress, because it has the computer or your phone doesn't have to compensate for constant motion of the entire frame. It's just your hands and your face moving around.
I thought my parents liked the view of my ceiling in my office, though, because I lay my phone on my desk and it just kind of points upwards, and sometimes I loom over it. Yeah, that doesn't work.
No, and those are always things that you can think about when you're doing this kind of thing. Another one, and you can see in Dave's shot, he has kindly closed the blinds on the window, but he will now open them up for the wonderful demonstration of how to blow things out spectacularly.
Yeah, there you go. Don't do that, folks.
Yeah, if you're going to be sitting beside a window, and I have a window right here, I have a curtain across it to soften the light so it's not as harsh. That produces a slightly more even lighting in the room. So if you can avoid sitting with a window behind you or directly beside you that will dump a ton of light on you, it makes the video look a lot cleaner.
My daughter is doing videos for school because she needs to record herself playing viola.
Right.
And yeah, we've had to literally turn her around in the room so that she could be playing facing the window, because or else half of her was brightly lit and the other half was in shadow, and it didn't work.
Well, the other solution, which is a little bit of rabbit hole, set up a C-stand and a big white sheet and bounce the light back onto her. But let's not go there today.
I'll let her know that she needs to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll make her happy with me. So you also want to keep in mind positioning. So right here, you can see that this camera is looking down at me a bit, and that's because the camera is built into my monitor. But if you change the angle where the camera is either equal with your eyes or looking up towards you, it changes people's perception of you a little bit. So you want to keep that in mind. You'll see that in movies a lot, where they'll move the camera down very low, and it makes the person look more threatening. If it's camera's up high, like really high, it makes them look diminutive. If it's equal, then you're on an equal stance with everyone else. Like if you look at Dave, he's framed cleanly, and he's basically straight on the camera, which puts him on equal footage.
Yes, my camera's sitting on top of my monitor, and like I could totally, grab the camera and do this, which would not work, or
exactly,
stick it down here, right? I think it works well right where it is.
Yeah. Video call fatigue. This is a thing that everybody is having to deal with these days. Yesterday, Dave and I were on a nearly 3-hour BIMUG meeting. Yep. And, at about 2.5 hours, everyone's like, yep, we need to get up and walk around and do something. So and normally we program in a break of 10 minutes for everyone to get up and go walk around and, go to the kitchen and all that stuff, because sitting for that long can be really tough. So especially for work meetings that seem to drag on forever, it's really important to build in a break. And it's the same thing with family, because my family Zoom, we can be talking for 3 hours because there's so many of us and everyone's catching up, and it can be chaos. You want to make sure that you build in a break, and it's not like, oh, well, I'm going to run off and go pee. No, it's everyone stops for 10 minutes and come back, because it makes it nice and clean and straightforward.
I'm doing one of my clients is doing a class, and it's a 2-hour class, and we have after about 45 to 50 minutes, there's a 10-minute break. And I'm even considering not giving people access to the Zoom meeting, because I'm running the Zoom meeting, not allowing people to turn on their cameras and microphones during the break, to just force people to get away from the computer for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it does make a difference, because we noticed that Tom and I have been doing training for a very long time. And we noticed that 45 minutes to an hour is kind of the maximum most people can pay attention for, one period of time. Think of being in class, you're really focused, it's 45 minutes, and then you're cooked. And that 10 or 15 minute break gives you enough energy back to be able to pay attention for the second half. So yeah, take breaks. It's important.
Another thing that we want to talk about is body language cues. Now, this is especially important when there is a large number of people on a call at the same time, like we had yesterday with BuyMug. It also is the same thing with my family, because there can be 15, 20 of us on at once. There's a natural flow to conversation, and sometimes, well, video conferencing has lag. There's always a very slight amount of delay when one person is speaking, then another person starts speaking, and it's very different than being in person. And I think most people know that now because we've been living in this for a while now. But the importance of paying attention to other people, because now what seems to be evolving is people will do something like this. They'll raise their hand and just say, I've got something to say that's going to take more than 5 seconds, where frequently what'll happen is I'll be talking and then Dave will interject a comment, but it's not a pause, it's an interjection. Whereas hold up your hand, I have something long that I want to contribute, which then will point people to, okay, then Dave is going to talk about something.
And hopefully I'll remember what it is by the time. One of the things that I notice with body language, so you can see that for me, you can see my shoulders and my head. But sometimes being in a video call means that you need to be much further away, where there's a lot more of you that can be seen. You know, my wife talks with her hands constantly, and I find that I can't do a video call with her if I only see her face, because I kind of lose half of what's going on. So sometimes having, you know, using Tom's, you know, stand for his iPhone is great, because he can just step further away and talk to people from a distance. And maybe your family is like that, where everybody talks like this and gives us motion sickness. Maybe it isn't. But yeah, kind of be aware of these things, that being at a further distance may actually be better, because it provides more of the body language, because we're used to seeing the entire body when people are, you know, when two people are talking. And if you're really in close here, yep, Dave is watching the screen, Dave is watching the screen, Dave is awake. You can't really tell anything else, right? So yeah, I do vary it back and forth depending on the conversation I'm having with people.
Yeah, and that's always important, is just to be mindful of that. One of the other things that you want to do when you're starting up a call like this is you want to make sure that you've turned off notifications and silence the ringer on things, because it can be really amusing when the when your call gets interrupted by someone else texting you or someone else attempting to contact you, especially for work. Or having a cat walk across the keyboard or whatever.
Yeah, I had that yesterday in BuyMug. I'm in the middle of doing a demo and everybody can see my iPad screen, and then there's text messages coming up from a client, and I'm like, okay, this could have been really embarrassing, right? So yeah, turn on Do Not Disturb. In iOS, it's, well, Tom, maybe you can share your phone and just show people how to turn on
Sure.
Do Not Disturb.
Just give me 1 second to do that.
So in iOS, there is the swipe up from the bottom of the screen. There's swipe in from the top right-hand corner on certain models. Both of them will take you to the control center, in which you can have a bunch of things turned on and off. In my case, I have, for example, the volume and the brightness. There you go. So you can see Tom's screen. Let me make that bigger so I can see what he's doing.
Okay, so we were going to go find Do Not Disturb.
Yeah. So in the top right-hand corner, you can see the battery is at 91% and the rotation lock is enabled. When he swipes up to turn on, so go into the control center and smack in the middle, the little moon there above. Yep, so he turns that on, and Do Not Disturb is now on for the next, well, until tomorrow morning. If you hold it down, I think there's some different settings. Yeah, this is really cool. For an hour, so for in Tom's case, that's actually really useful, until I leave this location. So if you are in a meeting and don't want to be disturbed, it will stay on until your GPS figures out that you're further away. And until the end of this event, well, it it actually knows that we're in the middle of a meeting. So there you go. It's now scheduled. And this is really important. I've had this before where, gee, it's been really quiet. None of my clients are calling. Nobody's panicking. I wonder what's going on. And then I look at my phone and I realized, oh yeah, I've been on Do Not Disturb all day. And it's been really nice to have a, busy, quiet day, but that's not the point of being reachable. So now that Tom is on Do Not Disturb, even if so let me just send him a text message here. So, hi, Tom. Okay. You'll see it doesn't, oh, it still pops up on your phone.
Oh, because you're in a,
I'm special.
you're special.
There you go. So if somebody else could try bothering Tom and it won't happen. So yeah, Do Not Disturb is very important. Now, in some cases, you're just talking to a friend or whatever, don't worry about it so much. But if you're planning on being in an hour-long call or whatever, Do Not Disturb is important.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other etiquette things? Did we talk about lighting? Yeah, we did talk about lighting.
We did touch on lighting, and it just falls into, you want to make sure that you aren't, that you want to be as well lit as reasonable. And you'll see it pretty quickly when you sit in front of the camera. I mean, you can see that I am reasonably well, or you could see that my screen wasn't being shared, and so was Dave. And it's the biggest problem I find is when people are sitting in a very dark room, it ends up getting very grainy because most cameras struggle with low light. No matter how good or how modern they are, everything, the less light there is, the less information there is. So it ends up looking a bit
in this
worse.
room, I have no ceiling light. So in the evening, it's like my desk lamp, and suddenly I'm brightly lit sideways. It doesn't work very well.
No, and there are actually lights now. They're called ring lights, and basically they are a circle of light that you put your camera, you put it around your camera, and it produces this fairly nice, even lighting across a person's face. Yeah, and those you can get those very inexpensively, but with all things, more expensive ones typically are better. But
if you want to look into any of this kind of stuff, take a look on how people are doing podcasting, video podcasting, or YouTube channels. There's a ton of information out there.
Yep.
So shall we start on apps?
The next one is messages.
Yeah. Okay. So let me send Tom another message. Hello from iMessage. Oops, where am I typing? Sorry, I don't know where I'm typing. That should be, oh, there we go. Yep, that works. So one of the nice things about Apple's messaging platform is that when you're using it through the internet, so in Apple's messaging, which shows up in blue, you can see the little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner is blue. Messaging is end-to-end encrypted, which means it is secure. And it goes through the internet, so it doesn't cost you anything. If your phone plan has limited numbers of text messages, it's not included, okay? Which is really nice. And what I really like about iMessage is that it also goes out to all of my devices. So this is not a cell phone to cell phone thing. It's all the Apple devices with my Apple ID in them. So, the iPad over there the kids use for school also gets my iMessages, which I should turn off. And then it goes to every single one of your devices. It's encrypted. It's, all this stuff is great. And then when you reply from a specific device, iMessage is actually smart enough to know where your conversations are. So if I'm replying from my computer, my phone is not going to go ping, ping, ping until I ignore Tom for a couple minutes, and then he sends a new message. So there's a lot of this in the background stuff that's built in that's really, really nice. iMessage will also forward text messages. So in your phone settings, so if you want to jump out to settings, Tom, and then go to phone. Keep going. There it is, phone. So in phone, and everybody should spend a couple minutes going through their phone settings. So here you can see the access, right? Siri and notifications and incoming calls and announce all these things. And you can see calls on other devices. So Shana was asking about that. So calls on other devices, when a call comes in and you have calls on other devices enabled, a regular cell phone call will ring on Tom's Mac, iPad, and well, on his laptop, his desktop, and his iPad, which is really nice in that if your cell phone is plugged in and charging, you can answer the call on your computer. If you're walking around the house with your iPad and your cell phone rings upstairs, it's okay. It patches it through. What I've done is it's allowed to ring through on my computer, but not on my iPad. I don't want to be bothered on my iPad.
That's
So
probably a good idea.
Yeah. And I have to admit that the very first time this happened to me, I had a brand new iPad, had to go pee, and of course brought the iPad with me, and it rang in the middle of me going to the bathroom, and it scared the bejesus out of me because I had no idea this feature existed. And yeah, so, these are one of the things that you kind of want to set up and be aware of. But honestly, if you don't need it, you can just turn it off. And you'll see the limitation here is your devices need to be logged into your iCloud account, and they need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. If you got like a fast and slow Wi-Fi network like 2G and 5G, that doesn't matter. That's considered the same. But you can't be on your neighbor's network and your networks. That won't work.
And one thing worth mentioning is when you get a call, it will actually, like when you get a text message or something like that, it will ping on the device you last used first. So it's not like all of your devices will start pinging it at once. If you were on your phone, if you were, doing something on your phone, that's the first place it will go. If the second place you were was your computer, it will go to your computer instead. So it kind of intelligently knows which machine, which device you're working with,
Yeah,
and then will attempt to get you
cool.
there. Yes, it is.
Yeah, very cool, because I can switch from I can be chatting with Tom all day in messages, and I switch from my phone to my iPad to my computer, and the other devices aren't pinging and ringing. Like, it's smart enough to figure out where you are. It's very cool. Isn't there another one? Not only calls, but there's also text messages. Is that a different setting?
I don't believe so, but we can check.
Yeah, respond with text. Yeah, messages. So this is exactly. So in the messages settings, you can choose all the addresses and phone numbers and whatnot that you can send and receive from. But text messaging forwarding near the bottom there, that will send text messages out to these other devices. For some reason, Tom's iPad isn't showing up here, which is kind of weird.
It's too old.
It's too old. There you go.
Yeah, it's too old for that feature.
Okay, so in this case, this is an awesome feature. It means that when I get a text message, so this is from somebody who has an Apple phone with no data plan or anything like that, and they're sending me a message, it's going to show up in green. When somebody from Android or some other type of device that can't use Apple Messages sends me a text message, it also shows up in green. They get forwarded to my other devices. So I can be sitting at my computer and reply to text messages. I love that because it means I can use a full-size keyboard.
Yes.
And part of that etiquette for messaging with people is that I much prefer to use full and mostly complete sentences, and the ability to spell things and so on is awesome.
Yes.
My kids, on the other hand, don't do that. But I've noticed that when it's anything shorter than a certain, if it's, "Hey, Dad, you home?" That's going to be kind of weird and odd and short. But anything longer than that, I've taught them that, they need to write sentences. Helen has raised her hand. Helen, please go into the chat and post your question. And Wendy wants to go over text messages. Okay, so text messages can be forwarded from your phone out to your other devices. Just go to settings, and on your iPhone, go to settings and make sure you can. So you go to settings, you go to messages, and then you go into text message forwarding and you turn it on. messaging has to be on. These devices need to be logged in with the same Apple ID. And if you can't find this on your phone, then either your phone is too old or something else is not available. I can't control that. You don't need to do anything on the receiving devices to allow it, as far as I understand. The other thing that you can do with iMessage, so this is on the computer, you can enable screen sharing. So this is a fantastic way of helping other people at a distance. So on the Mac, when you're having a conversation, there's a little thing called details up in the top right-hand corner in iMessage. You can click that. There's a couple of options. And one of your choices is ask to share screen. And it works really, really well. If you're having problems connecting, which does happen, I find that doing a FaceTime call from the Mac to the other person's Mac, then requesting screen sharing works perfectly. So there must be better magic in FaceTime than there is in messages. Have you found that as well, Tom?
I use this particular feature very heavily
Yeah.
all the time, and it's one of those magic things of usually it'll be either a client or sometimes my sister who will contact me with some bewildering question, and I'm like, okay, let's just share the screen so that I can have a quick look to see and be able to figure out what she's talking about. And a lot of the time it's very difficult for someone to communicate what the problem is. They just know something's wrong and they're not sure. So what the words that are coming out of their mouth do not necessarily equate to what actually is the problem. So it's a lot simpler for us to have a quick look and go, there's the click that, and then we're good. And that was
my aunt, whom I'm allowed to make fun of. She called me one day and we spent 45 minutes trying to figure out what the issue was. Couldn't get screen sharing to work, obviously. And in the end, I finally calmed her down enough to get her to read that thing in the middle of the screen, and it said, click OK to continue. And so, yes, screen sharing is awesome.
Yeah.
It saves you a lot of headaches. Now I realize that, we're half an hour in, we're like going through this fairly quickly. Again, I'd like to remind people, please come and join us on BuyMug Talk mailing list, because we can answer this in a lot more depth.
Okay.
So Joanne, the screen sharing is set up on your Mac. So not what Tom is showing us. He's showing us his iPhone.
Yeah.
But when you go,
but I did take a screenshot.
there you go. When you go to the Mac and you look at the conversation, you can click on details, and then you can click the overlapping squares and either invite to share your screen or ask to share another screen. Again, we could have a whole hour-long seminar on this. So message notification, we've mentioned it goes based on the device you're on. One of the really nice things, so Tom has an Apple Watch, which he's very fond of, and the messaging also works with the Apple Watch. So he does not have to have his phone on him. He can respond from the watch, which is really cool. I think that's an awesome feature, that he can text from it, he can use voice dictation with it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of this. All your Apple devices are going to be very tightly integrated. So is he messaging? Ta-da! There we go.
Yeah.
That's from the watch. Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had a big, long discussion about the Apple Watch yesterday, and the consensus is it's great, and it also shows you the time. So the other service that Apple provides is FaceTime. I find that I do use FaceTime quite a bit more than any of the other services. We've looked at, we're using Zoom right now. Zoom works really well for meetings, but I find FaceTime is much nicer to just, reach out and talk to somebody. Google Hangouts, Skype, and there's so many others, WhatsApp and Signal and
that's the thing, is it just never, there's so many different services.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, use, realistically here, what's important is use what works with the group of people that you're conversing with. So at work, it tends to be Slack and Google Hangouts and Zoom in no particular order. With family, it tends to be FaceTime. With BIMUG, we've been using Zoom, so it really just depends on the convenience. Use what's convenient. I mean, realistically, it doesn't matter which service you use, as long as you're socializing and having fun and talking to people. Right. For screen sharing, yes, the other party. So the question here, Wendy is asking, does the other party need to have an Apple product to share your screen, to share screens? The short answer is yes. You need to be talking from one Mac to another. There are other products out there where you can screen share between all sorts of kinds of devices. The most common one and the expensive one is called TeamViewer, and it works really, really well. And there's a ton of others.
Yes.
Can you put multiple families on FaceTime? Yes, you can. The limitation, as my daughter and I discovered, you have to have a specific level of device and above. And I don't remember what the level is, but it has to be like, iPhone 8 and better. And the Mac has to be some version of the OS and better, or else it just does not work. So in my daughter's case, she had at the time an iPhone 5, and I have an iPhone 8, and we just couldn't get it to work between multiple devices until we did a little digging and found it has to be new enough. At which point you're probably going to be switching to Zoom or Skype or Hangouts or whatever, because those limitations are not there.
Mm-hmm. But
So
if everyone's running relatively modern equipment, yes, you can have multiple. And I have a few people who I meet with fairly regularly, and there'll be 4 of us, and it's all FaceTime. And one of the interesting things is the quality of the video on FaceTime is substantially higher from what I can see. And I think that that's really interesting. I mean, it also probably uses a heck of a lot more bandwidth, but if you have the bandwidth to burn, you might as well. And how do you set that up? That's a great question. When you're on a call, there is an option, there'll be a plus sign, and you click on that, and you should be able to add another person that way. We didn't think to have a third person handy to call and do that, but
you can
it's
still
actually
do a FaceTime call with me, and at least we can show the
okay, sure.
where the button comes up.
Where do I put FaceTime? Oh, there it is.
You can do it from inside of Messages. Show people how to do that.
Okay. So we just click on David, and you'll see here at the top, you have the option for audio, FaceTime, or info. So if I click on FaceTime, it'll do a FaceTime call. So let's do that. And here we do it. We're talking about framing. So I'm now going to frame things a little nicer.
Turn Do Not Disturb off.
I'm not special in his world, apparently.
There we go. Oops. Try that again, Tom.
Sure.
I can hear it ringing on my Mac, but there we go.
There we go.
All right. Accept. Everything's ringing around here. There we go.
I'm going to turn the volume down on the phone so that it doesn't start going crazy.
We're not seeing it on your screen share.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
So I'm still seeing your messages. Okay. So that's bizarre. Well, just flip the thing up and just take a screenshot of adding another person.
I can take a screenshot, sure. There we go. Okay.
All right. Well, might as well end this.
Open that.
So you can see Tom is talking to me here. And when you slide your finger up from the bottom, whoops, that's Control Center. When you just tap on the screen, there's a series of tools that are available, and they go away fairly quickly. But if my phone was new enough, I could tap on add another person to this call.
Right. I'm just taking a screenshot of that too.
Here we go. If you
okay, let's go back
to that
to
again. So there is a way here. Poor connection, yeah, of course. So when you tap it and bring up the messaging, there's a little line here, and if you just pull it upwards, there's a bunch of other tools underneath, and there is the add person. All right, I hung up on you, Tom.
Yeah, that's okay.
So,
So,
now you should.
Here's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And then if you pull up from the bottom, you'll see this, and you'll see right here, you can click on add person.
Yep.
And when you add person, that will give you access to your list of people that you can contact and then add multiple people. Really quite straightforward, but I suspect that, and this is one of those neat things. I suspect the reason why you guys couldn't see the FaceTime call is the privacy settings in iOS preventing a call going through over screen sharing.
Yeah.
Because that's a little dodgy to do. So
yeah.
I think that's one of those safety nets that they have built in to protect us.
Yep.
So
not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned.
Nope, I would agree with that.
And FaceTime calls work on iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, Apple Watch doesn't do video, it'll do an audio call, but you can still answer from there, and your computer.
So right here on the screen, you can see I've gotten a call from a number, and this isn't necessarily a messaging thing, but it is a nifty feature built into iOS that lets you block unknown calls from people who aren't in your address book. You can just dig around in the settings. It's under phone, but it's brilliant. All those telemarketers just go straight to the garbage can.
It does mean that you need to add people into your contacts diligently, though.
Yes, which I do.
And that's important too for messaging, because having people in your contacts, putting their email in, the correct name in, the phone number in, all that kind of stuff is important, because if you don't have that in there, it makes it really hard to be doing iMessage, for example. Because if your friend isn't in your contacts, you can't just, there's nothing to tap, there's nothing to click on, right? So yeah, be good and add people in there. Makes your life easier in the long run. Is there anything else about FaceTime we should mention?
I was just looking at the notes, and I think that, read receipts and audio messages.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you can.
So there's a question. So while you're getting ready to show those,
Okay.
Joanne is asking, what is the protocol for letting everyone know when you're going to have a FaceTime session and to see if they're available? To be honest, I tend to treat meetings in sort of 3 different ways. One is a spontaneous phone call type of thing. And the way I think about it really simply is for messaging, I tend to think of it as, a text message is something you just send and hope for a quick response. An email is something longer, more complicated. You want people to take their time. A phone call is kind of like a text message. Call them. If they answer, you talk. If they don't, happens later. FaceTime calls, like, my mom FaceTimed me yesterday evening just because. So it's kind of like a call, right? I don't treat it as anything different. A meeting, on the other hand, is a lot like an email. You tend to sort of have a bunch of people involved, at which point you want them to sort of schedule it in. I would suspect that having a family FaceTime call is something you want to schedule. At
Absolutely.
which point, you can create an invitation in your calendar and put everybody in and see if they'll all, if that time works for everybody, and you go around and around and around until you finally find something that works. By the way, there's a lot of services out there that will help you solve this problem. And even if they're across different time zones, it doesn't matter, you just have to say, hey, we're working on Eastern Standard Time because I'm the organizer. And so, my cousin overseas, well, he's got to figure out what it is. And I just give a time that tries to be reasonable. I'm not going to say, hey, let's meet at 9 a.m. Eastern when it's 2 a.m. for my cousin, right? So it's going to be in the afternoon. It's probably going to be on a weekend, and, around and around and around. And eventually you guys will figure it out. And sometimes you have to split them up.
Absolutely. And I mean, the way we manage this is because I'm the one that organizes, I'm a bit of a dictator about it. I stand up, it's going to be at this time,
Most people like it.
We've kind of settled into a pattern now because there was a lot of negotiating at the beginning, and because these are very regular, everyone kind of knows that, around 3 p.m. on Sunday, there's going to be a call for everybody. And basically what that means is I send out an email with an invitation, and usually I try to have a theme for each one. Is, you know, we'll go around one family at a time just to do quick updates, but then there's a theme like talking about favorite movies or a favorite memory from childhood, something to just so we can talk and learn something about each other while we're doing it.
That's really nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, I found out the reason my dad hates mustard is because he and his siblings had to pick mustard leaves when they were kids in the field across from the home on the farm. So it's like these little things you just never knew.
Okay. Yeah, I think that those things make it a lot more interesting. I had a Zoom call with family that was 16 Zoomians, and it was total chaos. My grandma is trying to log in and trying to, like, she's yelling at her phone because she doesn't have the volume turned up high enough. And, there's no etiquette, there's no rules. Everybody's talking all at once. I recorded it for hysterical purposes,
If you're going to record it, let everyone know before you start recording.
Zoom has a recording option.
Yes, I know, but it's an etiquette thing to tell them that you're going to be recording before you do so.
Yeah, in advance. FaceTime, can you record FaceTime calls?
I don't believe, not easily.
Not easily.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And I don't think we were going to talk about Skype and Google Hangouts. I don't think those are easily recordable either. Skype, you can add on plugins on the computer. Google Hangouts, I've never tried. So again, it's just a matter of arranging it. So you're going to show us something, Tom?
Right. So there's audio notes. So if you look at the very bottom in iMessage, there's this little waveformy thing that I'm about to click on. And when I start talking, it's recording. And when I let go, it's going to give me the option to send it to Dave. So I can play that back, or I can just hit send because we all heard it. And it will show up on his machine, and then he will have the option of listening to it or not. That is useful sometimes when you just want to send you don't necessarily want to type it out, but you want to just say something, or you want to say, listen to this weird sound the fridge is making.
And that little keep text underneath is important because these audio sounds will disappear after, I think it's about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So you have to actively I want to keep this.
Yes,
I think that's an awesome feature, and it should exist for a lot more than just that.
Yes.
Yeah. I also use dictation a lot. So if you tap in the message field, so there's a microphone to the left of the space bar at the bottom. I think
Dave,
that this
I
is
think we're going to have brunch someday in the distant future.
I think this is an awesome feature, and
Period.
And then tap the keyboard to make it stop, right? There we go. But yeah, I totally think that this is an awesome feature.
Yeah.
And I really, really like it. I have a pair of Apple AirPods, which are awesome. And if you don't have AirPods, maybe get yourself a pair of Apple headphones. They do still come with the phones. And use those if you're in a noisy environment. And I love them because it means that I can actually reply to messages by dictation. When Siri decides to behave, that's another story. But it means that certain people who are not comfortable typing in front of a computer or on a phone can still send out messages very easily. So I've taught my dad how to do this. He just doesn't do emails, but talking into the computer is awesome. Now he does emails again. So yeah, there's a lot of these really cool features built in.
Mm-hmm. And you can notice here, it's right below the message I sent, it says read at 10:43. So that means that we have read receipts are turned on. And this is one of those features that is really useful because it means that I don't necessarily have to, he doesn't have to reply. I know he's seen it because it says read at 10:43. So that's a very useful feature because you don't necessarily have to acknowledge it. There is a feature called tap back, which you can click. And if Dave, do you want to do a tap back on a message? So if you click and hold on a message, a bunch of options will show up, and I will reciprocate. So you can send a ha-ha, but if I just scroll up and I click and hold, you'll see these options, and I can send him. And then, so where do we set up read receipts? That's a good question. It's under messages, and it is right here, send read receipts. And you can actually turn that on and off based on certain people. I forget how to do that on iOS, but on the Mac it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, please do turn this on.
Yeah.
It really does make our lives easier to know that you've read it, even if you spend the next 17 minutes agonizing over the appropriate response. In a lot of cases, just you've read it. That's it. Ah, there it is.
Yeah,
Send
there.
read
Yeah, I was
message.
just wanted to quickly find it, but yeah, there it is. So you can select that. You can control that per contact if you want, but my basic thought is turn it on for everybody because it's just easier to let people know that yes, I've seen what they sent me, or that
Now you definitely know you're being ignored. No, it's just I've
yes,
read the
and that's
message.
okay. Sometimes
Um,
it's okay.
Yeah, one of the nice things, messaging, for example, a lot of people are not super comfortable with this, but my wife and I have had cell phones for 20 years because I got one through work and I got her one through work as well. Why not, right? Well, we discovered that texting is better than phone calls
Absolutely.
because, when she texts me something, I can. Didn't my wife text me a few minutes ago? Oh yeah, she did. Look at that. I got to go shopping because or else I get sucked into what I'm doing, right? And I completely forget about it. I find that these different modes of communication are important, and I really like to have that visual, it's right there. And I don't feel the need to constantly, jump and reply and so on and so forth. And it's less disturbing than phone calls. All of these things, talk to your spouse and significant others when you're doing this. Like I've told my kids, call me whenever you need to, but it's perfectly fine to just text me. And so when my phone rings and it's one of my kids, then I absolutely have to answer, right? Because they don't call just because. And if they text me, well, yeah, whatever. That's just normal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, again, back to etiquette.
Yeah.
So we seem to be 12 minutes to go, Tom.
Yeah, well, we're kind
We
of
did it
where we
again.
should be. No, we're
Yeah.
we're almost exactly where we should be.
All right.
The next thing we're supposed to look at is Skype.
So, briefly here, I mean, we said in the beginning, you know, Apple has FaceTime and iMessage, and there's Zoom, and there's Skype, and we're going to briefly show Hangouts and others. But all of these are all the same as far as we're concerned.
Pretty much.
Use what you want. So, yeah, go ahead and pop open Skype there. Let me find Skype on my computer or my phone. Here we go. And I am just going to poke Tom and call him on Skype. Let's see if screen sharing works this way.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
All right. So I've muted it so we don't hear a big echo, but
Yeah.
as you can see, it's the same functionality as FaceTime. There's a couple little different tools on the screen, but basically it's us having a video chat. There's different odds and ends. Again, here you can also add people. Hey, there's a start recording button in here.
Is there?
Yeah. And there's a screen share option too.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And there's
I'm not going to start
subtitles.
screen sharing within a screen share because that's a little too Inception-y, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you know? I just turned on subtitles. I wonder if it automatically
starts translating what gets said or captioning what
mangling
gets said.
our sentences. Oh, look at that. It does. Starts translating. That's awesome. There you go. I just found a new feature. Now this is only showing up at my end. So yeah, turn subtitles on.
Oh, right there. Okay, there we go. Let's see what happens now.
I was reading a conversation about this from a gentleman who is deaf on one of the Hacker News type forums. And he was explaining that having, in his case, it was a Zoom call, I think, and there's no subtitles. So he's got a video call, and when the video is not great and it's too dark or you can't see, it's really, really hard to lip read. But with this subtitles feature, it suddenly becomes a lot more useful. So that's
seems
really
to be
awesome.
It seems to be stuck.
No, I found that it took a little while for it to
to
work for me, but eventually it suddenly kicked into gear and started. It's now stopped.
Yeah. Okay, well that's fine.
But here, I'll take a screenshot and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, because your video is completely locked up now.
All right, I'll hang up here.
Yeah.
Back here. And then for the chat functionality, it's exactly the same as what we had before in iMessage. Let's see if I can screen share or send you. Yes. This one. Done. Did it send it? I don't know what it's doing. I thought I sent you a picture.
It sent a little teeny tiny thing.
Oh yeah, it sent something.
Yeah. Okay, no, just stop. Okay.
I don't know what it did. But the point being is that Skype really works exactly the same as iMessage and FaceTime.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Although that feature of being able to record the video is kind of cool and have subtitles is very cool. So let me just go into Hangouts here. Yeah. And let's do this again. So I'm just going to go, Tom, Hangouts would like access to the camera. Yes, do give, your device access to the camera and the microphone. It's kind of important for making calls. All right.
That's a Google error if I ever saw one.
Okay. Try again. Nope. Let me call you here.
I've never seen that error before.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I'm going to take a screenshot of that because I have to try to figure out what that is. Okay.
Right.
And it's
so I'm calling you. There you go.
There we go.
I have the power. I don't know why you can't call me, but so yeah, that works. One of the nice features is, you can turn your camera on and off. You can fiddle with stuff. One of the things that I find useful, let me get my finger out of the way of the camera here, is that you can also flip the camera around. So the camera that's facing away from you tends to be higher quality than the camera facing you. So here you can see my computer screen with Tom and I and the chat in one corner, the notes in the other, and I have a whole another monitor over here with other stuff on it. But I find it very useful to be able to, when we moved in here, I gave people a tour of the house because I was able to point the camera away. Oh yeah, there's my camera, my antique iSight camera up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very cool, a lot of fun, and it works the same. Hangouts works the same. We're all already in Zoom, but we did find, let me go back into Zoom here, that we can also Zoom from our iOS devices. Here we go. And
you're going to text me a link, aren't you?
You can use the same one I sent you last time.
Okay, let's go find that.
I thought I started the meeting. I'm in the meeting. Why aren't you in the meeting?
Because it's a demo.
I know. Hang on, let me go click that link. There's always demoitis. There's always something weird and funny that happens.
Always something weird, yep.
Okay. Now are you in the meeting?
Nope. It's waiting for you to start it. Anyway.
Okay, I don't know what's going on.
It's Monday and it's a demo, so there's our
I'm not going to worry about it. But either way, Zoom very much works the same as all of the other services. Instant Messenger. So somebody here is asking, what about Instant Messenger with Facebook?
Yeah,
sure.
Neither Dave or I use Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I have, so let me just look in my communications folder on my phone. So I have WhatsApp installed because some of my family members use that. I have Signal installed, which is another secure messaging service. I have a generic voice over IP software called Bria installed because I have a voice over IP line. I have Zoom. I have an Ottawa voice over IP provider that I use with work called Versature installed. And all of these are messaging apps, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm not going to get into why I don't use Facebook. If
Yeah,
you want
that's
to know
that in
that,
itself. That in itself is an hour-long discussion.
yeah,
So
yeah, I'm not a fan of Facebook. We'll leave it at that. Please look into Facebook's history of how they do things. So we'll leave it there. Yeah, so I mean, there's there's a ton of other services. Other things to mention: cellular data. So you can have cellular data enabled on your phone for different services, and you have to be careful. So
yes,
right now we're using Wi-Fi. Are you still screen sharing there, Tom?
no, I can. Just give me a
No,
sec.
you don't need to. But
No,
well,
I
actually, yeah,
am.
go in and show people how to turn off on and off cellular for. Okay, so you go into settings, and then you go up to cellular, and you'll see that right now Tom has cellular data actually completely turned off. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter.
That is
I
weird.
normally leave it on.
Yeah.
And you will need to turn it on to be able to adjust settings. And then down here, you can go in and you can turn it on and off for individual items. So I think these are sorted by how much use you made of them. So FaceTime is probably going to be way down there somewhere. There's phone, there's Hangouts.
Yeah.
So either way, the point here is that you can turn it on and off. So I have, for example, YouTube is not allowed on cellular because I made that mistake and watched an hour and a half on YouTube and ate my entire cellular data capacity for the entire month in an hour and a half. It was a good movie though. And FaceTime in my case is enabled. So Zoom here, if you stop for a second, Tom, go down a little bit.
Yeah.
So Zoom is disabled. So Zoom is now enabled, right? So
That's right.
I would not want Zoom enabled for video
Cellular.
calls
Exactly.
on cellular. Don't want it. FaceTime is definitely enabled on my phone. Messages is definitely enabled on my phone. Messages don't take up a lot, so that's enabled. Yeah, I don't know why we don't see. So there, your camera is allowed. Your contacts are allowed. Maybe it's in system services way up at the top. Go down a bit, down. Okay, and stop there. System services right above Safari. No.
Messaging.
No, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure. I'm sure there's a screen for FaceTime. Maybe you just anyhow, it's hiding on you. That's okay.
Yeah,
that's
it's Monday.
Yeah.
All right, so I can turn off screen sharing. And yeah. So one thing that you quickly, we'll send a link afterwards that gives you kind of an overview, an article that kind of covers how different services protect or don't protect your data. And one of the interesting things to remember is services like iMessage, Signal, and WhatsApp are end-to-end encrypted, which means everything that you send on them is encrypted all the way through. The only people that can read it are you and the people at the other end. That's the point of end-to-end encryption. There's an asterisk there that, if a 3-letter agency wants to read your stuff, that's a different problem. But in general, your stuff is protected under those services, whereas a lot of other services are not end-to-end encrypted, which is why sometimes you'll start seeing ads for things that you were talking to your sister about, because that has happened. So anyway, that pretty much covers everything that we have in our list. And I see that it's 11 o'clock on the dot. So
I'm just going to stick bimug.ca in the chat there. So if you guys have further questions, come and join us. You can send an email to info@bimug.ca if you want to be added to the announce list or the talk list. Please specify which one you want to be on. If you have questions, send them to info@bimug.ca. You will be asked to join the talk list so we can discuss the questions because we want everybody to participate.
Well, I'd like to thank David and Tom very much for this terrific presentation that will help all of us use our Apple devices better when communicating with others and when using messaging in particular. This is our last session on Apple devices, but the Tech Cafe will be back again next week with more information on communication, with a presentation on what you need to know about VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. So please go to our website at www.biblioottawalibrary.ca to register for this and other Tech Cafe sessions. Thank you again for attending today's session. We hope to see you again soon at the Tech Cafe, and goodbye for now.